Hey guys, welcome to the top 30 albums of 2018. I'm going to start with the honorable mentions, albums that were good, they're worth mentioning, but that didn't make the cut. FM by Vince Staples, Beer Bongs and Bentleys by Post Malone, Astro World by Travis Scott, Iridescence by Brockhampton, and The Carter 5 by Lil Wayne. And at number 30, Teairra Whack with Whack World. This is her first album. I'd never heard of her before this album. It's very brief, 15 minutes long, 15 tracks. Every song is 1 minute long, and she just says so much with such little time. And I think it's a good album, and it's worth listening to. And I'm anticipating her next project. Number 29, Paraffin by Armand Hammer. This is their third studio album. I haven't heard of Armand Hammer before this. It's really sort of a weird, abstract sort of sound. It sets himself apart from any other experimental hip hop groups or artists. And the lyrics are very good. They're very smart. I had to research some of the shit that they said, and it's a great album. Number 28, Vacation in Hell by Flatbush Zombies. Flatbush Zombies for a while have been one of my favourite hip-hop groups. And they just showed why they are in this album. This album is full of bangers with hard-hitting lyrics. Each rapper showed their worth on this album. Zombie really came through in this album. He disappointed me last album. And Michi Darko, as always, is probably my favourite in the group. And Eric Ark Elliott, he's just amazing, man. I love him. This is definitely my favourite Flatbush Zombies album. At number 27, I have Jid with DiCaprio 2. This is his second studio album under Dreamville. I love this album. It's Off D's, the first single. It's one of my favourite tracks of the year. Jid and J. Cole just go head to head, and it's just great. It's a lyrical battle, man. And my least favourite track's Tied. It just, I feel like he sacrificed a bit of his lyrical talent to sing, and he just doesn't have that voice yet. But it's still a great album, and I can't wait for his next one. Number 26, Orpheus versus Sirens. This is a joint album with Carr and a producer, Anamos. I've heard of Carr. I've heard The Knight's Gambit. I've heard Honor Kill the Samurai. He's a great rapper. He's definitely one of the most unique rappers in hip-hop history. And I like this album. It really draws from the Greek mythology. He even parallels it sometimes to his real life. It's a great album. It's a great listen. Number 25, I have NOIR by Smino. This is his second studio album, and it's just a bunch of feel-good songs. His voice is really unique, very high-pitched. All the songs are pretty catchy. The lead single, LMF, or Lion Mufasa, is just a feel-good track. I love that track. It's a great album, and it's definitely worth a listen. At number 24, Everything's Fine by Quelly Chris and Jean Grey. This album's great, man. I love the chemistry between the two. This album's hilarious, and it even has a comedian, Hannibal Buress. Yeah, I found his verse pretty funny. Most of the beats are pretty hard-hitting. This album's filled with smart and funny lyrics, and it's just a fun listen. At number 23, I have Ye by Kanye West. It's his 8th studio album. This year's been probably Kanye's most controversial year of his whole career. He articulates this year into this album, if you know what I mean, I guess. He talks about his anxiety, his depression, how he's bipolar. It's a short album, it's only 7 tracks. Ghost Town's one of my favourite songs of the year. And features like Ty Dolla $ign, 070 Shake really stand out, some of the best features of the year. And without a doubt, it's one of my favourite Kanye West albums. Number 22, I have Swimming by Mac Miller. Swimming is Mac Miller's last album before his before sadly passing away. With this album, he talks about his mental health and how he's overcome it. His production's more jazz type, very calm and smooth. It's a different sound as he does with most of his albums. Yeah, it's a great listen. And rest in peace. Number 21, we have Pusha T with Daytona. I thought this album was going to be called King Push, but I guess he likes Daytona watches, so he just renamed it Daytona. Again, it's only 7 tracks long. This is definitely Push's best work since he's been with the Clips, and all the instrumentals, they're all by Kanye West. They're just great. Some of the best instrumentals of the year. His lyricism is at an all-time high. He's just in his flows great. Definitely my least favorite track's Hard Piano. I completely forgot it was on the album when I listened to it again later this year. But this album's great. It's definitely his best work, and I can't wait for his next album, probably in 3 years. At number 20, we have Dirty Computer by Janelle Monáe. Janelle Monáe, she's had a great career. She's been shouted out by Prince, and this is definitely her most populous album yet, and it's one of her best. This album has a lot of sexual innuendos, and she even uses them to talk about political topics. The transition from Screwed to Django Jane is just amazing. This is a really, really good and powerful album by Janelle Monáe, and it's a great listen. At number 19, we have Oxnard by Anderson .Paak. It's his second studio album. He's gone for a more rap album than his last one, which was more soulful and R&B inspired. The lead single, Tints, is one of my favourite songs of the year. It's just a great song. Kendrick Lamar's verse is great. And I love the funkiness of this album too, with Dr. Dre and most of the instrumentals. It's just, this album's great, and anticipating his next. At number 18, we have Little Dark Age by MGMT. MGMT's been around for a while, at least a decade now, and this is definitely some of their best work. This album feels sort of nostalgic. You know, it has like some of the 80s sound, but it has that modern feel I just can't describe. The songs are pretty catchy, and this album shows that MGMT are back at their best. At 17, we have Taboo by Denzel Curry. It's his second studio album, so it's a great album. One of the best hip-hop albums this year. It's a concept album with 3 sections, light, grey and dark. And although Sumo sounds like it doesn't belong in the light side of the section, it's still a great listen. You can just flow through it like nothing. With his last project, Imperial, it's just sounded very one-dimensional. It's just screamo rap, just rapping fast. But now he's experimenting with sort of slower, soulful sounds. It's just a great album. One of hip-hop's best this year. At 16, we have Soil by Serpent with Feet. I haven't heard of Serpent with Feet before this album, but this is a beautiful album. The voice matches perfectly with the grand production, and this whole album is beautiful, and I love it. At halfway point, number 15, we have Blood Orange with Negro Swan. This is his 4th album under the alias of Blood Orange, and this is one of the most dreamy albums I've ever heard. It's just great. His voice is very soothing and unique, and the production just matches his voice. He does a good job creating an atmosphere with all the instrumentals, and this is really a great album, one of my favorite R&B albums of the year. At number 14, we have Isolation by Kali Uchis. This is their debut studio album, and this is a great album, man. The instrumentals on this album are just beautiful. It's so funky and soothing. Her voice too, it just matches really well. I like the different perspectives Kali Uchis takes on this album, and Just as Strange is a great song, and don't even get me started on After the Storm, one of my favourite songs of the year. This album really is a great listen, I really do recommend it. Number 13, we have Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides by Sophie. The album starts off really soft with It's Okay to Cry, and then Ponyboy and Face Shopping, it's just hard hitting. Then it rests at Is It Cold in the Water, and oh my god, Mozart's sister, she does a great job on this, man. She's really great on her contributions to this album. This is a great album and one of the best pop albums of the year. At 12, we have No Name with Room 25. Room 25 is the first studio album by Chicago rapper No Name. Room 25 is like a jazz rap album. It's very very soothing and calm. No Name's rapping is at an all-time high. Some of the features on this, like Adam Ness, Felix, Raven, Lene, Smino, and Saba, really round this album off well. And this album shows No Name's maturity. It's a really great album. I really do recommend it. Number 11. We have Your Queen is a Reptile by jazz group Sons of Kemet. This album gives a different sound to jazz. It's just great. The instruments are very fast-paced and exhilarating. All the brass instruments used on this album are used perfectly. Some of the best jazz music I've heard this decade. We're at the top 10. At number 10 we have Wide Awake by Pocket Courts. The production on this album, man, it's bouncing and it sounds great. The lyrics are like political, or they may come off as preachy. They're delivered brilliantly. The song Violence is one of my favourites, as it talks about how common violence is and how we are desensitized to it. The album is great and definitely one of the best punk albums of the year. At number 9, we have Joy as an Act of Resistance by Idols. This album is filled with aggression and hardcore instrumentals, and the aggressive vocals by Joe Talbot is just amazing. The song Samaritans, another one of my favourites, is about masculinity and how it's forced upon most men. There really isn't anything bad I can say about this album. It's just a great album. At number 8, we have Care For Me by Saba. The song Prom King is definitely one of my favourite songs of the year. He talks about his cousin and how he died and where he was at the time. It's definitely a very powerful track. This album is one of the best hip-hop albums of the year. At number 7, we have Veteran by JPEG Mafia. This album is great. Peggy's an experimental hip-hop artist, and he manages to set himself apart from Death Grips, even though he might still get comparisons to them, which I think is unfair. The song Baby I'm Bleeding has one of the best verses of the year, man. It's just so hard-hitting. And in this album, he shows his sense of humour and his great lyricism. For me, it sounds like mainstream songs put on weird and experimental beats. You know, some of the flows are very mainstream sort of style. This album is definitely one of the most creative and in-your-face albums of the year. At number 6, we have Youre The Snitch by Death Grips. Death Grips have been my favourite hip-hop group ever. This is their experimental sort of style. They always switch it up, and their sound is still evolving after almost a decade of releasing music. And Youre The Snitch really shows why Death Grips are one of the greatest groups of hip-hop history. At number 5, we have Poem Unlimited by US Girls. When I first heard this album, oh my god, it was just beautiful, her voice. This album's really diverse with its sounds. It has some R&B, has some pop, and it just mixes a bunch of genres together. And Poem Unlimited is definitely one of my favourite albums of the year. At number 5, we have Sung Rap Songs by Earl Sweatshirt. It's his long-awaited third studio album. He took a 3-year hiatus and came back with Nowhere To Go, which I think is one of the best songs of the year. He talks about his depression and anxiety he's been going through for the past 3 years. This album's really executed perfectly. Although the flows are simple, he really picks it up with the in-depth lyricism. Earl produces over half of the album, and I think all of the beats are just perfect. This is without a doubt Earl's darkest album and his best album by far, and there's no silent dislike on this album. Number 3, we have 2012 to 2017 by Against All Logic. This album, Nicholas Jar he just goes off with this production. Before this album, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really like house music. Oh, this album's just great. The samples that he uses and the funkiness of the beats, just amazing. Production's really mesmerising. The samples are used perfectly. The album really is something special. At number 2, we have Kids See Ghosts by Kids See Ghosts. The group consists of Kid Cudi and Kanye West. It is another 7-track album, but it's filled with great content. It's filled with production from Kanye West. It's just the best production he's ever done. And Kid Cudi just sounds amazing over these type of beats. He's really in his element on this album. The track Free, Ghost Town Part 2 is one of my favourite songs of the year. It's a mixture of hip-hop and rock, just very creative. And Reborn is just an amazing sounding song. Kid Cudi just really sounds great over this. This has some of the best production Kanye West has ever made, and Kid Cudi is really in his element. This is my favourite hip-hop album of the year. And at number 1, we have You Won't Get What You Want by Daughters. The lyrics are layered and they're just extremely dark. It's a great noise rock album. The production is really loud and unsettling. It's very terrifying. The song Less Sex is great. Could mean literally anything that's addicting. The song Less Sex is the most simple on the album, but if you really read into the lyrics and you really think about it, it's just a great song with great content under it. And it also acts as a break from all the noisiness around. Every song in this album just gave me chills. It's definitely the darkest album I've ever heard. 2018 has really been a great year for music. I can't wait for 2019. New year, new me. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and see ya.